The sun rose slowly over the dry fields of Willow County, painting the sky with soft orange colors. The old ranch stood quietly in the middle of those endless lands, its wooden fences weathered by time and wind. This ranch belonged to Samuel Hart, a man known by everyone in the town. He was not famous for wealth or power. Instead, people respected him for his calm manners, his honesty, and his simple way of living. Samuel was already in his late 60s. His hair had turned almost completely white, and his hands were rough from decades of hard ranch work. He had once been strong, the kind of man who could lift hay bales on his own and ride horses for hours without rest. But now his back hurt, his knees stiffened dizzily, and he often felt tired before he even began his day. He lived alone. Years ago, he had a small family, his wife and their little boy. But life had taken both away from him through sickness, leaving him with memories that still rested heavy on his heart. Ever since then, Samuel worked quietly and avoided talking much. He took care of his cattle, fixed broken fences, and kept his ranch alive one slow day at a time. But as he grew older, simple tasks became harder. He often forgot to eat on time. He would sometimes skip sleep because he needed to finish chores. Neighbors worried about him, but Samuel always replied with the same gentle smile, "I'm fine, just a little slow." One day, Mrs. Ramirez, who lived a few miles away, visited the ranch. She brought along her family's young maid, a shy girl named Maria. Mrs. Ramirez explained that Maria needed part-time work to support her family. Samuel tried to refuse at first, saying he didn't want to trouble anyone, but Mrs. Ramirez insisted that he needed help, and Maria would be grateful for the work. And so, from that day, Maria began working at Samuel's ranch. Maria was around 22 years old. Though she carried herself with the quiet maturity of someone who had grown up with responsibilities from a young age, she always wore simple clothes, a long skirt, a modest blouse, and her dark hair tied neatly in a braid. Her eyes were gentle, and she hardly spoke unless someone asked her a direct question at first. Samuel did not know how to behave around her. He was not used to having anyone else in his home. When she cleaned the kitchen, he would step outside. When she cooked, he would sit in silence, awkwardly keeping distance so she would not feel uncomfortable. He always treated her with full respect, speaking politely and making sure she never felt pressured or uneasy. Maria, in her quiet nature, understood him without words. She kept her movements small and careful, never disturbing the silence of the home. She cleaned rooms he had long ignored, washed dishes properly, and prepared warm meals that Samuel had forgotten how to make for himself. Over the first week, she learned Samuel's routines. She noticed how he coughed after working too long in the cold air. She saw him touch his back with a wince whenever he bent too much, and she realized he hardly ate unless food was placed directly in front of him. Maria did not question him, but she made small changes, soft blankets on the chairs he used, warm tea left beside his tools, simple meals always ready on time. Samuel noticed all these things but did not say much. He felt grateful, but he was also confused. Why was someone being so kind to him? He thought he did not deserve it. Many people had moved on from him over the years. He had grown used to silence, to loneliness, to living like a man waiting for time to pass, but Maria brought quiet warmth into the ranch without even meaning to. One day, as she swept the porch, Samuel came outside with 2 cups of tea. His hands shook slightly from age, so Maria quickly stepped forward and helped steady 1 cup before it spilled. Their fingers touched for only a second. But Samuel pulled back respectfully. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're welcome," he replied, clearing his throat. "I thought you might need something warm." She nodded, her shy expression softening. "It is kind of you." Samuel felt a stirring in his chest, not of romance or anything improper, but of something he had not felt in years: companionship. Just knowing someone else was on the ranch made the loneliness less heavy. Over the next few days, Maria started arriving earlier and leaving later. She said she had more chores to finish, but Samuel suspected she simply wanted to help him more. She noticed he often forgot to drink water while working, so she began bringing a jug outside. She saw the way he limped in the mornings, so she placed his boots near the fireplace to warm them before he wore them. Samuel, though touched, felt guilty. He did not want her to carry so much for him. "Maria," he said one morning as she washed dishes, "you don't have to do so much. I don't want to trouble you." She shook her head quickly. "It is no trouble, sir. You work hard. I only help." "But you're young," he said kindly. "You shouldn't be looking after an old man like me." She turned to him, her hands still wet, and shook her head again, this time with more emotion behind her quiet voice. "Age does not matter. You are good to me. That is enough." Samuel stood speechless. Her words were simple, but they hit him deeply. He had always treated people kindly, not expecting anything in return. But hearing someone say he mattered, it was something he was not used to. Days passed, turning into weeks, and the ranch slowly came back to life. With Maria cleaning every corner and organizing small things, the house looked brighter. Samuel began eating better, talking a little more, and smiling occasionally at small moments like when Maria accidentally dropped flour and left a little cloud floating in the air before laughing softly at herself. Her laugh was rare, but it warmed the whole house. One evening, Samuel found her on the porch, sitting alone after finishing her work. The sun was setting behind the hills, coloring the sky in red and gold. Maria looked lost in thought, her hands resting quietly in her lap. "Is everything all right?" Samuel asked gently. She nodded. "Yes, sir. It is peaceful here." Samuel sat down slowly on the other chair, trying not to groan from knee pain. "Peaceful," he repeated with a faint smile. "I suppose it is." Maria looked at him carefully, her eyes filled with something soft concern. "Maybe respect, maybe both." "You take care of this place alone for many years," she said quietly. "It must be hard." Samuel stared at the land stretching before them. "It was harder when the house was empty," he admitted. Maria lowered her eyes. She understood. The wind blew gently, carrying the smell of dry grass and earth. The silence between them was not uncomfortable anymore. It felt calm, like two souls sharing the same tired sunset. As night approached, Maria finally stood. "You must rest now," she said. "You work too much." Samuel wanted to reply, to say he had become used to pushing himself. But before he could speak, Maria stepped closer and placed a folded blanket beside him. "For the cold," she said, "please take care." And then she added something that made him freeze for a moment, not in fear, but in surprise. "You do not have to be alone in everything," she whispered. Her words were simple, pure, and filled with genuine care. She did not say them to impress him or seek anything. She said them because she truly felt he needed to hear them. Samuel did not know how to respond. He simply nodded, swallowing the tightness in his throat, as Maria walked away toward the path leading home. Samuel remained seated, holding the blanket she had left. For the first time in years, he felt a warmth inside him, not from the blanket, but from the kindness of someone who saw him not as an old man, not as an employer, but as a human being who deserved care. The ranch was no longer silent. It breathed with new life. And Samuel, after so many lonely years, felt a small spark of hope begin to return. Little did he know, this quiet, shy maid would change his life more than he ever expected. The next morning began with a soft, cold wind sweeping across the ranch. The sky was pale gray, and clouds moved slowly like they were carrying the weight of incoming rain. Samuel woke earlier than usual, his body stiff and aching more than normal. He tried stretching, but his back protested sharply. Still, he forced himself out of bed. He had always believed that work must continue, even if the body complained, before he could even put on his boots. He heard a gentle knock at the door. It was Maria. She stood outside with a small basket in her hands. Her braid looked slightly messy, as if she had rushed to the ranch without taking time to fix it properly. Her face held quiet concern. "You are early today," Samuel said, trying to hide the pain in his voice. She looked up at him with soft eyes. "I thought you might need help with breakfast." Samuel felt his chest tighten, not in pain, but in a warm, unfamiliar way. He stepped aside to let her in, and she moved quietly into the kitchen, setting the basket down on the table. Inside were fresh bread rolls, eggs, and a small container of butter. "You didn't need to bring all this," Samuel said. "I wanted to," she replied simply. Maria began preparing breakfast. Samuel watched her from the doorway. She worked with gentle movements, swashing the eggs, heating the pan, arranging utensils, all with quiet care. She never made unnecessary noise. Her presence was calm, like soft wind passing through a peaceful valley. As she cooked, Samuel suddenly felt dizzy. His vision blurred for a moment, and he had to hold onto the doorframe. Maria turned immediately. "Are you all right? Yes?" "Just a little lightheaded," he said. Though his voice did not sound convincing, without hesitation, she guided him to sit on a chair. She poured him a glass of water and placed it in his hands. He drank slowly, his breath shaky. "You work even when you are hurting?" she whispered. "That is not good." Samuel lowered his gaze. He felt embarrassed that someone so young had to care for him like this. "I don't want to be a burden to anyone," he said quietly. "You are not a burden," Maria replied. "Not to me." The simplicity of her words made his heart feel heavy and soft at the same time. He wanted to thank her, but the words felt too small for what he truly felt. After breakfast, Samuel insisted on doing some chores outside. The sky darkened, but he was worried that the cattle fence needed fixing before rainfall made the ground muddy. Maria tried to stop him, but he promised he would only check the fence and return. He did not keep that promise. Hours passed. Maria cleaned the house and prepared lunch, but Samuel did not return. She peeked outside repeatedly, anxiety growing with every minute. Finally, unable to wait longer, she grabbed her shawl and rushed toward the fields. The wind had grown stronger. Dry leaves danced across the ground. Maria hurried along the narrow path, calling Samuel's name softly but urgently. When she reached the far end of the field, she saw something that made her heart drop. Samuel was lying on the ground near the broken fence, one hand gripping a wooden plank and the other pressed against his chest. His eyes were closed. Rain droplets began to fall from the sky. Maria ran to him, knees hitting the dirt as she reached his side. "Samuel, can you hear me?" She cried softly, shaking his shoulder. His eyes slowly opened, but he looked weak to weak. "I slipped," he whispered. "Just tired." Maria's hands trembled as she helped him sit up. His breathing was shallow, and his face looked pale. Rain began falling harder, soaking both of them. "You should not have come alone," she said, her voice breaking with worry. "I didn't want you to carry my work," he murmured. "You are more important than work," she said firmly, surprising even herself with the strength in her voice. With great effort, she helped Samuel stand. He leaned heavily on her, his weight pressing down on her small frame, but she held on. Step by step, she guided him back toward the house. Rain washed over them, cold and unkind, but Maria did not stop. She kept whispering words of encouragement, softly telling Samuel he would be okay. By the time they reached the porch, Samuel could barely walk. His knees gave out, and Maria had to keep him from falling. Somehow, she managed to get him inside and onto the nearest couch. Her clothes were soaked, her hair dripping, but she cared only about him. She rushed to light the fireplace, her fingers shaking as she struck the match. Soon, warm light filled the room. Maria grabbed blankets from the cupboard and covered Samuel carefully, tucking them around him to keep him warm. "Does anything hurt badly?" she asked, worried her voice might break again. "My back. And my chest feels tight," he admitted quietly. Maria boiled water and made herbal tea she had learned from her grandmother. She lifted the cup to his lips carefully. Samuel drank slowly, his eyes fixed on her with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this," he murmured. "You should not apologize," she replied softly. "Anyone can fall, but you must rest now." For a long time, she sat beside him, checking his forehead, adjusting the blankets, and watching his breathing. Samuel looked at her with tired eyes. "You remind me," he said softly, "of kindness I almost forgot existed." Maria lowered her gaze, her cheeks warming slightly. "You are kind, too," she whispered. "You just carry too much alone." Samuel tried to shift, but pain shot through his back. Maria immediately helped him sit comfortably. Her hands were gentle, steady, and warm. "You should not work alone anymore," she said. "You need someone to help you sometimes, but every day." Samuel smiled weakly. "That would be asking too much. Not from me," she said. The rain continued outside, tapping on the windows like a soft drum. Inside the ranch, the fire crackled warmly, covering the room in golden light. Samuel felt the warmth spreading through his body, not just from the fireplace, but from Maria's presence. Hours passed. Maria stayed at his side, even when he told her she should rest. She refused. She wiped rainwater from his forehead, checked his breathing, and made sure he did not feel alone even for a moment. As evening turned into night, Samuel grew stronger. His breathing steadied, though he still felt weak. Maria prepared a warm bowl of soup and helped him eat slowly. "Thank you," Samuel said, his voice soft. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me," she whispered. When she took the empty bowl back to the kitchen, Samuel watched her. The way she moved, the care she showed it, was something he had not seen in so many years. Not since the days when his wife used to place warm meals in front of him. Not since the days when he used to hear gentle words spoken with honest worry. Maria returned and sat on a chair next to him. The firelight reflected in her eyes. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was peaceful, not tense. Finally, Maria took a slow breath and said something she had wanted to say for days, but had never dared. "You should not think you are alone in this world." Samuel looked at her, confused. "Why do you say that?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I see how you live. You work even when you are hurting. You stay silent even when your heart is tired. You help others, but never ask for help yourself." Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. "I don't want to see you suffer like that." Samuel swallowed hard. No one had ever spoken to him that way in a long time. "Maria," he whispered, "you don't have to carry my worries." "But I want to help you," she said softly. He stared at her, unable to find words. In that quiet moment, Maria slowly looked up. Her eyes met his, full of sincerity, fear, and something deeper that she could not express openly. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "I'd do anything for you." The words hung in the air like a fragile leaf floating in the wind. Samuel froze, not out of fear. Not because her words were inappropriate, but because they came from a place of genuine care. Her tone was innocent, respectful, and filled with worry. She said it not as a promise of anything personal, but as a sign of loyalty, gratitude, and earnest emotion. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He could only stare at her as his heart struggled to understand what he was feeling. Maria realized she had spoken too boldly. Her cheeks turned red, and she quickly lowered her gaze, twisting her hands nervously. I only mean, I don't want you to carry everything alone," she explained in a trembling voice. Samuel finally found the strength to speak. "Maria, your kindness is more than I deserve." "You deserve kindness," she said softly. "Everyone does." The lantern flickered. The wind outside softened. The moment between them stayed still, wrapped in silence, respect, and the warmth of unspoken understanding. Samuel felt tears forming in his eyes, but he blinked them away, not wanting to show weakness. Maria stayed with him until he fell asleep, then carefully placed another blanket on him before sitting quietly in the chair beside the fireplace. She promised herself she would not leave him alone, not now. Not ever, not until he fully recovered. And Samuel, without saying it, had already begun trusting her in a way he never thought he would trust anyone again. The next morning arrived quietly. Storm had passed, leaving the air cool and fresh. Sunlight pushed through the clouds, touching the ranch with soft golden light. Inside the small house, Samuel opened his eyes slowly. His body still felt weak, but the pain was less sharp than the night before. The warmth from the fireplace had carried him through the night. He noticed something immediately. Maria was asleep in the chair beside him. Her head rested gently against the back of the chair, her braids slightly undone, and her shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders. The firelight had faded, but the glowing embers still kept the room warm. Samuel watched her for a moment, felt something deep inside, something he had not felt in many years. It wasn't romance or anything improper. It was gratitude, comfort, and a quiet sense of being cared for. That feeling alone made his eyes soften. He slowly tried to sit up, but his back protested. The sound woke Maria. She opened her eyes quickly, as if afraid something had happened. "Samuel, are you okay?" she asked, leaning forward with worry. "I'm fine," he said gently. "You should have gone home." She looked down, embarrassed. "I didn't want to leave you alone." Samuel felt the truth of those words sink into his heart. "I'm grateful," he said. "More than you know." Maria smiled softly. "I am glad you are feeling better." She stepped into the kitchen and prepared warm tea. Her movements were slower than usual. She was tired too. She still continued without complaint. When she returned with the cup, Samuel accepted it with both hands, feeling its warmth spread through him. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that felt peaceful rather than empty. Finally, Samuel spoke. "Maria, about last night, the things you said." Maria instantly lowered her eyes, her cheeks turning pink. She twisted her fingers nervously, unable to look at him. "I didn't mean anything wrong," she whispered. "I only said it because I was scared. You were hurt. You were not breathing well. I didn't want anything bad to happen." Samuel nodded slowly. "I know, and I didn't misunderstand you. I know your heart is kind." Maria relaxed a little, though she still looked uncertain. He continued, "But I want you to know something. Your care, your words, they touched me deeply. It has been a long time since someone worried about me like that." Maria looked up finally. Her eyes were warm and gentle. "You deserve to be cared for." Samuel took a careful breath, calming the thoughts running through him. "You are a young woman with a good heart. You should not feel responsible for an old man's troubles." "I do not see you like that," she replied softly. "I see you as someone who has suffered too much alone." Her voice held honesty, respect, and courage. Samuel felt a quiet ache in his chest, an ache that came from knowing she truly meant those words. He reached out very gently, placing his hand on top of hers, not in a romantic way, but in a gesture of gratitude. "Thank you, Maria. You don't know what your kindness means to me." Maria didn't pull her hand away. She accepted the gesture with a humble nod. A moment passed. Peaceful, warm. Filled with unspoken understanding, a new routine begins over the next few days. Samuel slowly regained his strength. Maria stayed close, helping him with meals, guiding him when he needed to walk, and making sure he didn't push himself too hard. The ranch began to feel different, brighter, warmer. Samuel found himself waiting for her every morning, checking the road to see when she would appear. And Maria, though shy, began smiling more often. She laughed softly at little things like when a hen chased a bug across the yard, or when a curious calf tried nibbling on her braid. Samuel noticed each of those small changes. Each one brought him a quiet sense of happiness. Neighbors saw them together and often commented kindly. "She's a blessing for you, Samuel," one of them said. "You look healthier these days," another noted. Samuel never explained the details, simply smiled and said, "She helps more than anyone knows." Maria remained by his side every day. She cleaned the barn, cooked meals, and kept the house neat. More than the work she did, it was her presence that eased Samuel's loneliness. She never tried to replace anyone from his past. She never asked for anything. She simply cared in her own gentle way. A difficult conversation one afternoon. Samuel sat on the porch while Maria hung laundry in the sunlight. The gentle breeze moved the clothes lightly. Samuel watched her quietly, thinking about everything that had changed. When she finished, he called her over. "Maria, may I ask you something?" he said. She approached with a shy smile. "Yes, of course." "Why do you care so much?" he asked softly. "Why do you stay here, even when it is hard?" Maria hesitated. She looked at the ground for a long moment, unsure if she should speak her truth. Then she finally said, "Because you never speak harshly to me. You never shout. You never look down on me like others sometimes do. You treat me with respect. That is rare." Samuel felt his heart tighten. He had never considered that simple kindness might mean so much to her. She continued, "All my life I have worked in other people's homes. Some treated me like I was invisible. Some treated me like I was only useful for work. But you see me as a person." Her voice trembled slightly. "That is why I care," she said softly. "That is why I want to help you." Samuel looked away for a moment, hiding the emotion in his eyes. He had never intended to earn such loyalty. It simply treated her the way he believed every person deserved to be treated, with respect and kindness. He turned back to her. "Maria, you deserve a good life. You deserve a future where you don't have to work so hard. I don't want to hold you back from that." She shook her head gently. "You don't hold me back. You help me feel safe." Those words hit him with unexpected force. Safe. That was something he had not felt in a long time either. A promise of care. That evening they shared a simple dinner while the sun set behind the hills. The sky turned deep orange, and warm light filled the room. Samuel ate slowly, his strength still recovering. Maria watched him carefully, making sure he didn't strain himself. After the meal, Samuel stood slowly and walked toward her. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Maria," he said, "you have done more for me than anyone in many years. I want you to know that I will always treat you with respect. As long as you are here, this home is yours too." Maria's eyes widened with surprise. No one had ever spoken such words to her. "You mean I can stay?" she asked softly. "If you wish to," he said, "not as someone who must serve me, but as someone I trust. Someone I appreciate." Maria lowered her head, and Samuel saw tears gather in her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything to me." Samuel nodded gently. "Then stay as long as you want. This ranch is warmer with you here." Maria wiped her eyes and smiled, a bright, pure smile that Samuel had never seen from her before. A new beginning. Days passed, then weeks. Samuel grew stronger, able to walk around the fields again without collapsing. Maria still helped him, but now she did it without fear. She felt secure, knowing that she had a place where she belonged. Their bond continued to grow, not through grand words or dramatic moments, but through the small, everyday care they gave each other. Samuel fixed the fence again. But this time Maria stood beside him, handing him tools and reminding him to take breaks. They shared lunches under the shade of the large oak tree. They repaired the barn roof together, laughing when Samuel dropped a hammer and pretended it was the wind's fault. The ranch no longer felt like a place of emptiness. It felt like a home. One evening, as they stood on the porch watching the sunset, Maria spoke softly. "You help me feel like I am worth something," she said. Samuel looked at her with gentle eyes. "You were always worth something. You just needed someone to tell you." Maria smiled shyly. "And you helped me believe it." Samuel felt warmth spread through him, not just from the setting sun, but from her words. "And you," he said slowly, "helped me remember what it feels like to be cared for." They stood there for a long time, the golden sky glowing before them, the soft wind brushing past like a blessing. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic speeches, just two people, one old, one young, who found comfort and trust in each other's presence, a bond formed not from promises, but from kindness, a companionship built not on need but on respect, a quiet story of two hearts healing together. And from that day on, neither Samuel nor Maria felt alone again.